Station, timing. Taking each train in time. Oh, you sometimes have the feeling that the fabric of your life is unraveling. D around you? Is your appointment book at risk of getting jam-packed? Have. You had the feeling that your life is about to go off the rails under the weight of all those commitments and responsibilities? If you have answered yes to one or more of these questions, you probably don't have good time management. This often leads to an inefficient management of finances, since time and money are closely linked. To give a very simple example, if you do not do the shopping in time at the supermarket, which has the best offers, you will have to go to the convenience store last thing at night and pay much more. Now let's see a basic yet efficient method for optimizing your time, money, and life. The comfort zone is a behavioral state within which a person operates in an anxiety-neutral condition, using a limited set of behaviors to deliver a steady level of performance, usually without a sense of risk. The urgency-importance rule. Organizing yourself well is an art form, and it is often the case that time goes by without our doing half the things we intended to get out of the way before the weekend. We often have so many things to do that we do not know where to start, and this results in our having a mental block and not carrying out any task at all. Either that or we devote ourselves to something that really is not important because we think it is urgent. To better organize our weekly schedule, we need to have a clear idea of which tasks are pressing and, once dealt with, will allow us to enjoy the weekend without feeling guilty and to sleep at night without getting up stressed in the morning. The objective is to avoid always being behind schedule, so we can act a little like humans from time to time. Go to the movies, read a novel purely for pleasure, and enjoy other worldly entertainments. In his talk The Last Lecture, Randy Pausch recognized the Covey matrix had been a fundamental key to all the successes in his life. Urgent, non-urgent. Important time spent on crises, problems requiring immediate solutions, troubleshooting, deadlines. Time spent on training, prevention, detecting or creating new opportunities, building relationships, drawing up plans. Results, stress, tiredness, peace of mind. Results, growth, sound projects, improvement. Quadrant I, quadrant second. Unimportant time spent on interruptions, phone. Calls, emails, messages, social engagements. Results, fatigue, distraction, lack of concentration. Time spent on putting off tasks, unnecessary preparations, social networks, entertainment, enjoyable activities. Results, lethargy, relaxation. Quadrant the 3, quadrant 4th. Following this quadrant, we can make lists with a well-defined order in accordance with the urgency-importance rule. Once we have our task list, we should organize it as follows. 1. We will mark urgent and important tasks as absolute priorities and start them as soon as possible. Next, we will take care of the non-urgent, important ones. 3. Finally, we will address the unimportant, urgent ones. 4. We may simply eliminate the non-urgent, unimportant ones from the list. The Kamprad method. Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of Ikigai, has a hard system which suggests the following. Divide your life into 10-minute units and sacrifice as few of them as possible to meaningless activity. 3 classic ways that time runs away from us sometimes. We don't know how, but time slips away from us like sand between our fingers. Let's see which are the main runaways in modern life and the antidotes we can use to fix them. Distractions via social media. The solution is simple and requires no long-winded explanation. Disconnect everything, at least while we are engaged in an activity that requires our attention. Meals with friends and/or clients. A very active professional may find themselves eating in restaurants every day of the week, where, apart from spending money, they lose an average of 2 hours a day. If they also drink wine with the meal, the subsequent drop in performance is tremendous. Solution: accept 1 or 2 meals a week at most. If we have to deal with a lot of people, we may group them in 4s or 5s according to their business area or interests. In that way, we gain work hours and we make a gift of friendships and contacts to others. Another strategy to save time would be to swap the meal for a coffee break that lasts no longer than 40 minutes. Dealing with personal matters. You should never do this during working hours. If we spend this time on something that should be done during our leisure time, we will find ourselves spending weekends and evenings while everyone else is resting, making up for what we should have done. Finally, it is never a good idea to skimp on sleep with the intention of catching up later. We may do this very occasionally, for example, the night before the morning of a big delivery, but it should be avoided if at all possible. Apart from the health risks and the risk of speeding up the aging process, this is not really a way to save time. If you only rest for 4 or 5 hours, your mind will work more slowly, and your performance levels will be much lower than if you had rested for at least 7 hours. However you look at it, it isn't worth it. The Pomodoro technique, a very efficient way of improving your performance and finishing things on time, is the so-called Pomodoro technique. 1. Divide the time allocated to work into unbroken, distraction-free, 25-minute periods. 2. Take a 5-minute break after each 25 minutes of work. 3. After 4 Pomodoros are reached, we may reward ourselves with a longer break of 15 minutes. This is a very effective method because limiting the time to 25 minutes forces us to fully concentrate in order to fulfill the little mission we have assigned ourselves. We make sure of giving ourselves breaks and, moreover, we alleviate anxiety with the satisfaction that we are completing many pending tasks. The technique's name comes from the tomato-shaped kitchen timer used for cooking. When used in the office or home, it helps us with the challenge of accomplishing our missions without dying of exhaustion. 13th station. Pareto, the 80-20ths rule. Also known as the law of the vital few or principle of factor sparsity. This, a rule was formulated by the Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto, who asserted that 80% of all observable phenomena are attributable to just 20% of all the possible causes. The starting point was a calculation of the wealth generation in Italy he made in the early 20th century. Through this macroeconomic exercise, he realized 80% of Italy's wealth was produced by 20% of the population. The Pareto principle is not a scientifically demonstrated truth, but it can be a very effective tool for focusing our decision-making. It is widely used in the business world and also in engineering. For example, 80% of the traffic in cities tends to build up in 20% of the roads. If you want to improve traffic flow, the best thing to do is focus on improving the 20% with the most traffic. In information technology, the principle appears when we realize 80% of bugs are produced by 20% of the source codes and 80% of internet traffic is mysteriously concentrated in 20% of the servers. Less is more. Tanaka was an entrepreneur from the restaurant sector who consulted me a few years ago to improve his profits. When I suggested he eliminated 80% of his menu choices to increase sales at his restaurants, he looked at me as like I was crazy. He told me he didn't want to eliminate anything. What he wanted was to add new things to improve the range of choices. I convinced him to try the stripped-down menu in one of his restaurants as a trial run. A week later, Tanaka phoned me, brimming with excitement, to tell me that in the restaurant with the limited menu, sales had risen by 35%. This businessman ended up changing the menus in all his restaurants for the minimalist version. Tanaka's mentality has changed from one of wanting to add to one of wanting to rule things out. The last time I saw him, he asked me, "What else can I cut out of my restaurant business?" The Tanaka case is a clear-cut example of the Pareto principle. The first step in applying the Pareto principle is to gather data on the current state of your business, the way you operate, and your lifestyle. The second step, once you have identified what you get the most out of, is to get rid of or improve what you get the least out of. This second step is very often the most difficult to take because we find it hard to believe things will improve if we get rid of 80% of stuff. Essentially, 80% of your profit is generated by 20% of your hard work. Your Ikigai, your passion in life, is not part of the 80% of unimportant things you do every day, but is part of the essential 20% you enjoy doing the most. Don't get waylaid by the myriad of choices in that time-consuming, energy-sapping 80%. Learn to concentrate your energy on the essential things that bring you happiness and awaken your passions to expedite the search for your Ikigai. The Pareto rule in everyday life. The applicability of this rule to other fields has been widely recognized, and many experts have endorsed it with measurements like the following. 80% of the world's resources are consumed by 20% of the population. 80% of success is down to 20% of the effort made. 80% of the music broadcast on the radio comes from 20% of the songs available. 80% of our emotions stem from 20% of our experiences. 80% of the customers who come into a store only see 20% of the products displayed. Of course, this is not an exact science, and these proportions are only approximate, but they can help us realize that most profits and tangible benefits are achieved through making the most of a little bit of hard work. So we can make our life easier and more effective by making a list of the things and the tasks that give us the most satisfaction and which are our greatest problem solvers. Tim Ferriss, The Mathematics of Success. In his bestseller, The 4-Hour Workweek, the entrepreneur Tim Ferriss explains step by step, as the title indicates, how to go from a never-ending schedule from dusk till dawn to working just 4 hours a week. In order to achieve that, on the one hand, he used the Pareto rule to discover which 20% of clients or products were causing him 80% of his problems, and which 20% were responsible for his biggest profits. By getting rid of the former and keeping the latter, he managed to multiply his company's profitability since he freed up time he could then devote to finding more clients from the premium 20%. As the entrepreneur Alberto Cabezas says, a company makes real money when it begins to fire clients. Another strategy Tim Ferriss took into account to be more efficient was Parkinson's Law, named after the Briton who formulated it in 1957. It says that a task will take as much time to do as we have available to do it. In other words, the more time we have to do something, the more time we will waste. A way to avoid that is to set yourself time limits and work to stick to them. The less time you have to do something, the more you will focus on doing what is important and seeing it through on account of the pressure. The result will be the same as or better than if you have an indeterminate amount of time to do it and take things too easy. Other applications from mathematics? Be clear about what you can offer and limit the possibilities. The more options you offer a client, the more indecision you create, and the fewer orders you will receive. Claims Ferriss. If a designer shows 3 very different book covers to a publisher, the publisher might reject all 3 because the subconscious message is that the designer not clear in their own mind. And they transmit this uncertainty to the publisher. In this regard, Henry Ford found the ideal formula to satisfy his customers when starting out, hampered by the limitations of his recently opened factory. You can have any color car you like, so long as it's black. Less is more. In our everyday life, where we socialize with a multitude of people, both directly and through social networks, it is not easy to stop to think whether or not our social circles are appropriate for us. Oftentimes, we feel overwhelmed by people or activities that we find unfulfilling. This is why it is important to take into account the following, in accordance with the Pareto rule. 80% of the time you wear just 20% of the clothes in your closet. You can donate the clothes you hardly ever wear. 20% of the problems that worry us are important, and 80% are superfluous. So, remove them from the list. 20% of the people around you bring you 80% of your personal satisfaction. Devote more time to this happy minority and gain time for yourself. You only enjoy or feel happy about 20% of the things you do. Make this 20% your Ikigai and even try to make it your profession. If we take these points into account, it will be easier to focus on what is really important. Devoting our time to the people that matter to us, distancing ourselves from everything that undermines our mood, and finding time to do what we really want to. Are you in your 20% zone? Being productive and managing your time and energy well is vital to accomplish your objectives and live the life you want. This aim of this simple exercise is for you to check if you are taking advantage of the Pareto rule in your life. Do you carry out the necessary tasks to achieve the objectives you have chosen? Do you know how to delegate or get rid of the unnecessary tasks? Do you only use as much energy as is necessary to do what you must? Do you give your time to the appropriate people in your circle? Do you have productive conversations? Do you feel satisfied with your social activities? If you have answered no to 2 or more questions, that means you are still not in your 20% quality zone and should reconsider and be more rigorous at complying with your priorities. Next, here are some ideas for actions that will help you choose what is essential and get rid of the rest. If you are freelance or have a business, which are the 20% of your clients that generate 80% of your sales? Once you identify the 20% of your clients that make you the most money, get rid of the rest and concentrate your energy on looking after that most valuable 20%. Which 20% of your possessions do you value the most and use the most in your everyday life? Get rid of the rest. If you can't face the idea, start with one drawer. Take all the objects out of it, and, out of every 5, you will most likely only use one on a regular basis. Throw the 80% you don't use in the trash, or give them away or sell them. Which of the people you normally mix with make you feel the happiest? Spend more time with them and distance yourself from the 80% you least enjoy. Which 20% of your garments do you wear 80% of the time? Out of all of your hobbies, which are the ones that bring you the most satisfaction? Eliminate the rest and focus on delving into the ones that you feel the most passionate about. 14th station. The power of words. Give your projects memorable names. Ubaba, the witch who is the villain of the movie Sen Amp, Chihiro's Spirited. Yahweh steals the names of those she wants to enslave so they will work in her. Hot Springs Forever. Chihiro, whose name means 1,000 ghosts, is a 10-year-old girl who is bewitched by Yubaba and forgets her name. But not only does she forget her name, she also forgets what is real and what is not. Her memories disappear, her personality changes, and bit by bit she loses her personal identity. The storyline of this Studio Ghibli classic may seem somewhat philosophical and complex, but language unquestionably makes us human and differentiates us from animals. Dogs do not call each other by their names. We are the ones who give our pets names. Change your old programs. If you want to change your reality, you have to change your language and banish negative or defeatist expressions, along with those that disempower you, because they place decision-making outside your control. In that sense, there are language changes that transform our way of thinking, and therefore also change our acts and their consequences. Let's take a look at some examples of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Instead of saying, "I'd like to," "I wish," "if only I could," "if only I had," "I don't know," "I can't." "I'm happy when," you should say, "I'm going to," "I'm going to," "I'm on track to," "I'm happy." "I'm happy when," "I'm happy." The cone of experience language was a fundamental evolutionary step that enabled us to externalize what we were thinking. Philosophers debate about whether or not it is possible to think without language. Nobody has reached a definitive conclusion, but what is clear is that language and reality go hand in hand. When something has a name, it starts to exist in our reality, while if it lacks a name, it fades away in the universe of the abstract and immaterial. For that reason, there are many exercises in this book where we recommend making lists and writing our intentions down in black and white. The written word has more power than 1,000 vague ideas in our head. A personal contract. In our Ikigai process, a 3-session method aimed at people defining their life objectives and managing to make them come true, I devote the 3rd visit to drawing up a contract together. In this, the person commits to carrying out certain activities on a daily, weekly, and more long-term basis. At the end of the contract, they put down their signature, and I sign next to it as a witness to the agreement. To reinforce the contract's power, the person will read the commitment they have just made every morning for the next 21 days, the time it takes to instill a new habit. Thus, after carrying out these actions for 3 weeks, the life change is guaranteed. Francesc. According to research into our brain, when we perform something actively, it is much easier for us to remember it, and thus to translate concrete actions into reality. When we write about doing something, the brain receives the message. It is actually engaged in performing that action. As we can see in the graph below, we tend to accomplish 70% of what we write, which means the written word is a powerful instrument for making our plans bear fruit. The Edgar Dale's Cone of Learning, printed under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 3.0 unported license. When something has a name, it exists forever. If you want to bring your life project into being, baptize it. Choose a sufficiently evocative name to attract you and motivate you to work on it. As the project progresses, maybe you want to change the name because it has evolved towards something else. No problem, change it. What is important is to have something to identify with that allows you to order your ideas and create a story inside you. In advertising, they often talk about storytelling, the story that lies behind a particular product or company. And the first page of every story always has a title. For example, Nepal Spirit could be the title of a trip with a couple of friends. We can use the word spirit to inspire us and to give the trip a spiritual purpose. If we use this label for all the stages, in the travel preparations, during the trip, and then on our return, with the passing of time, we will be able to recall those beautiful moments simply by saying, "Do you remember when that monk invited us to spend the night at his temple during the Nepal Spirit?" Zeniba, one of the characters who helps Chihiro to get her name back and exist again, says to the heroine, "Once you meet somebody, you never really forget them. It's just that the memory of that person takes a while to come back." To you, given that our memories are stored in some corner of our inner being, we have to use the right words to evoke hidden memories and connect ideas. They are like springs opening up new universes. Words are spells with the power to activate memories and neural patterns to make us more creative. For that very reason, it is important to become aware of the power of words. Find your spell. It is essential for our personal projects to have a name in order to keep us motivated. It is not the same thing to get up in the morning and think you have to go to the gym as to say to yourself, "I'm going to make my Vitruvian body a reality." In honor of the man to whom Leonardo da Vinci applied the ideal body proportions. Given that words have power, the exercise we propose is for you to find a spell, a word that resonates strongly with you, to empower your projects. Perhaps it could be the name of your favorite band, city, work of art, or the name of a star. You can even look for a power word for each area of your life you want to improve. For example, improving health, physical fitness, Vitruvian Man Project, revitalizing love, Venetian essence, if your first romantic trip was there, enhancing your finances, Buffett plan, if he is your role model. In any case, choose a character you admire in this field. Writing a novel, Hemingway session, for each time you sit down to write, as if you took on the novelist's form. Use the power name as often as you can. Say it to your friends and to your partner, and put it in your diary to strengthen your project. On Tuesday, I'm going to create my Vitruvian body. Part 2. A journey through our past. Kyoto. Exercises for rediscovering where we come from and using our personal experiences as a springboard. From the ancient capital of Japan, and much the same way that history is written by the victors, each person may interpret their own past positively if they master themselves. Diving into our origins enables us to bring our essence and our creativity to the present, to build a future that is full of possibilities. Nowhere is more of Japan's history preserved than in Kyoto. It was here that Akashi Kikuchi wrote the classic Heike Monogatari in the early 14th century. It is an account of the struggle between the Taira and Minamoto clans for control of Japan, interspersed with love stories, and is often compared with Homer's Iliad. Adachi Kikuchi lost his sight when he was 30 years old and joined a group of musicians in Kyoto that called themselves the Bidoba monks, after a Japanese string instrument, to make a living. They played music but also recited legends and war stories, the equivalent of the European troubadours. Adachi Kikuchi's storytelling technique became so popular in Kyoto that he became a leading figure in the former capital. A year before his death at the age of 70, he recited the Heike Monogatari to his disciple Teiichi, who took on the task of putting his words down on paper. The novel, which is over 800 pages long, can still be purchased today in any bookshop you care to enter in Japan. If this great epic, where some of the earliest historical events of Japan are played out, was written by a monk who was blind for most of his life, does it give a faithful rendering of the facts? Probably not, but it doesn't really matter. Heike Monogatari is still being published today because it is a story full of beauty. Beauty always wins. It survives the passing of time. That is why it is worthwhile hanging on to the beautiful things in our life. After our futuristic bullet train journey out of Tokyo, we have arrived in Kyoto. In the old streets of Gion, we can hear a girl playing the biba just as Adachi Kikuchi used to do 700 years ago. She is wearing a golden kimono and is kneeling on a tatami opposite screens, featuring traditional Japanese drawings. She is not a geisha. Not all the girls in Kyoto who wear a kimono are. She keeps her gaze fixed on the same spot on the ground, some 2 meters away from her, as if she were meditating. Her fingers flow gracefully and confidently across the bidowa strings without a moment's pause, as if they were controlled by supernatural forces. The milky colored skin of her fingers and the pale makeup on her face give her a spooky look that makes us feel as though we have been teleported back to the past in a time machine. The present and the past are intertwined in an eternal reality. The spell is broken when the performance finishes, and the girl takes out a smartphone she was hiding in her obi, the wide sash cinching her kimono. Kyoto is the epitome of how the past and the present come together. Modernity and tradition dance harmoniously in every corner of the city. For a complete self-fulfillment, it is also important to be on good terms with our past. Just like Adachi Kikuchi, interpreting our past in a positive and beautiful fashion empowers our present and future and makes our life take on a new meaning. We have all come out of bad relationships, or misguided work situations or projects that were of no use to us, feeling they had been a waste of time. But we may also choose to think that they did in fact have meaning, and that these apparently negative experiences taught us important lessons for our personal growth. In this second section of the book, we develop a series of techniques that will help us to explore our past in order to be better writers of the story of our life. The inevitable death of all things echoes in the ringing of the Gion shrine bell. First line of the Heike Monogatari first. 15th station. Kindergarten recovering the power of children. Imagine your train now passes by situations from your childhood you had. I almost forgotten about. You will probably be overcome by a feeling of wistfulness and maybe even sadness. This very emotion sometimes creeps up on us when we contemplate a group of happy children in a park. Why is that? Could it be that the children's game reminds us of values and dreams we have abandoned by the wayside? Sometimes getting back what we left behind at kindergarten before it is too late is the jolt our life needs. Watanabe, the star of the movie Ikiru, To Live, one of Akira Kurosawa's masterpieces, discovers he has stomach cancer and that he has less than a year to live. His initial reaction is to meet up with a novelist friend and head out on the town to let himself go in the delights of the Tokyo night. In one of the nightclubs they visit, Watanabe asks the pianist to play Gondola no Utei, the gondola song, and starts to sing it himself. Life is brief, fall in love, crimson lips that fade away while we are swept up in tides of passion, only to then grow cold, because there is no tomorrow. Climb into her gondola, before the flush of her cheeks fades away, for all of you who will come here no more. Before the gondola gets lost among the waves, a hand on her shoulder for those who will not return here. Before the flame in our hearts flutters and dies for those who will never return today. This song makes him remember how brief life is and how important it is to live it passionately, with an Ikigai as a beacon. Precisely what Watanabe has not done in all his years devoted to a job he doesn't like. From that point on, his life takes a new heading. He puts aside his work routine as a bureaucrat and devotes his remaining energy to transforming a waste ground in his neighborhood into a park for children to play in. He dedicates his final months to fighting against the Japanese government bureaucracy to make his childhood dream of a park with swings come true. The movie ends with Watanabe contemplating the finished park as he again sings Gondola no Utei. Reflecting on dreams, sometimes the great leap forward in our life comes from making what we dreamed of as children come true. Can you recover those childhood dreams? The first step toward bringing out the best in you may be to put down everything you wanted to be and do on a piece of paper. In fact, what we were passionate about as children contains a lot of clues about who we really are, about our Ikigai, and our potential as human beings. A child's mind is free of the bonds imposed by the pressure we see ourselves subjected to once we join adult society. This free spirit is a powerful trigger for creativity. Just like Watanabe, Randy Pausch, a professor of computer science at Carnegie Mellon University, also got the bad news that cancer was going to take his life earlier than he had anticipated. Pausch's last contribution was to give a lecture entitled Achieving Your Childhood Dreams. What he said in that talk made such an impression that it was later published in the book The Last Lecture. Randy Pausch explained how much he regretted dying before the age of 50, but how at the same time, he felt happy and satisfied because he had managed to make his childhood wishes come true. As well as explaining what those dreams had been about, he proposed that all his students do the same and listen to their inner child so as to believe in the impossible again. Think what a better world it would be if we all, the whole world, had cookies and milk about 3 o'clock every afternoon and then lay down with our blankies for a nap. Or if all governments had as a basic policy to always put things back where they found them and to clean up their own mess. And it is still true, no matter how old you are. When you go out into the world, it is best to hold hands and stick together. Robert Fulghum. Going back to preschool. We do not only abandon dreams among our childhood memories, but also fundamental lessons that end up buried underneath the dust of our daily grind and responsibilities. Like Watanabe in the movie, in 1988, a Seattle teacher realized that enjoying life and giving free rein to our happiness may be the simple secret to being happy and creating the life we want. Looking back, he recalled the forgotten lessons from kindergarten and school, and realized how much help all that could be to him in his adult life. And that is how he came to write down his ideas and publish them in his little book, All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Robert Fulghum never believed his little thesis could become a bestseller with 7 million copies sold. Before graduating with a theology degree and becoming a teacher, he had done a wide variety of jobs, from digging ditches to singing country music. But perhaps it was that inquisitive spirit or his modest nature that enabled him to rediscover his inner child and help many other adults to live with the powerful energy of their childhoods. Through short stories starring children, animals, and neighbors who are too grown up, Fulghum teaches us that some of the most important things we learn in kindergarten are: share everything, play fair, put things back where you found them, say sorry if you hurt someone, live a balanced life, learn something and think about something and draw and paint and sing and dance and play and work a little each day. When you go out into the world, be careful with the traffic, hold hands, and don't go far. Always pay attention to wonderful stuff. Remember the little seed in the glass. The roots go down, the plant rises, and nobody really knows how or why, but we are all like that. Goldfish, hamsters, and white mice, and even the little seed in the glass, all die. And so do we. And then remember one of the first words you learned, the greatest one of all. Look. In the look of children, we can find the seed of what is best about the human spirit. A power that enables us to discover the world, to dream of new adventures and make them come true. Awaken the child from its slumber. To carry out this exercise, you just need to look back and, holding a notebook, ask yourself the question, which 3 childhood dreams have I still not made come true? 1. 2, 3. Next, think how you could achieve these dreams. For example, if you wanted to be a movie director and you now work in a publicity agency, you may begin by building up a parallel activity, even if you only devote the weekends to it, in which this dream will have its own space. Maybe you could get some of your colleagues to work with you on your project, to take these projects from your imagination to reality at the same time. Make a note of 3 things that you can do to make each one of them take shape, along with the launch time. Dream first 1, 2, 3. Start of the adventure. Dream second 1, 2, 3. Start of the adventure. Dream third 1, 2, 3. Start of the adventure. 16th station. Nostalgia.